This video is possibly the first in an ongoing series of me showing users how to solve particular problems that they're having or scenarios that they want to achieve. So I was contacted by a subscriber who wanted to solve this particular problem. This is their exact note. I hope they don't mind me sharing it. The scenario is they have 8 bubbles on the screen that represent a definition. They've got a text box and image of a mouse that's always displayed on the screen. The text box reads, click each of the items on the left side of the page to display the associated definition. I want to be able to click the definitions in any order. I want the bubble to appear one color when selected and another when deselected. And the bubble here is the bubble, one of these 8 bubbles containing the definition. I want the text, i.e. the explanation of that term, to appear when the definition's clicked. Actually, when the bubble's clicked. And I want the text to disappear when the user clicks anywhere else on the page. This is an interesting one, we'll come back to this. If they click on another term, I want the current definition to be hidden and to display the definition associated with that term, i.e. the other term that they just clicked on. And if the user clicks anywhere else on the page that's not an actual term, I want all definitions to be hidden again. So this is what they're trying to solve. So I went away and built that. It took me about half an hour. I have built it out and got it all working, but I'll show you how I did that, because there's some interesting methods that you can use here, not just for this particular scenario, but for some other stuff as well. So I'll show how I built it and I'll show you the finished product as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build out these 8 bubbles. And the key thing here is appearing in one color when selected and another when deselected. So let's look at how to do that. I'm not going to make this look pretty because all I really want to do is show you the mechanism of how to do this. So I'm going to insert a rounded rectangle as the shape, okay? And this is going to be my buttons that they click on with the terms on them. And I'll just make this a random size in here. Let's see, make about that big. And let's see. Okay, so that is my button that's going to have the term in it, and I'm going to call this term selected 1, and I'm deliberately going to leave the number on the end because of the way that SAP Enable now numbers things or renumbers them when you duplicate them, and I'm going to duplicate this. So this is going to be where I've got a term selected, and I'm just going to put the text in here of term 1. Okay. And I might want to make that a little bit bigger in here or something else. So font size, I'll bump that up to 14, maybe a bit bigger. Bump that up to 18. So that's my term 1. So this is going to be my button where the term is selected. And then I'm going to show the explanation of that term. I also want to have it when it looks like it's not selected, so that you can toggle between showing it selected and not selected. And this is kind of the easiest way to do it. I'm going to duplicate this object here. And I'm going to call this one term deselected. It's also term 1. Okay, I want that text to be the same. But this is where I want this to be a different color. Okay, so I'm going to go into my thing here, shape color. I'm going to set it to a light blue. I'm going to set the border to a bit light as well. So this is when the button's selected. This is when it's deselected. And I'm going to put the deselected one over the top of the selected one. This is going to give us that toggle effect on it. Now, you could put the selected one on the top and the deselected behind, or the other way around. It doesn't really matter as long as you get your actions correct. So I've got these 2 things here. I've got a deselected and I've got a selected one. The other thing that I'm going to do in here is I'm going to add a little indicator to show when something has been looked at. So I'm going to go and I'm going to insert an image in here, and I'm going to insert this green checkmark image in here, and I'm going to scale that down a bit, and I'm going to put that right on here. So when they've looked at a term, it's going to have this little image to say, yes, you've seen this term already. Because again, the user wants to be able to see these, or the person who contacted me wants to be able to click on these terms in any order. So to help the user remember which ones they've looked at already. So here I'm going to call this term scene 1. Again, I want that 1 on the end. Now I'm going to do a bunch of things with that. When they click on this, the way I've got this set up now is that I have term selected, and then on top of that I have term deselected, and on top of that I have the green check mark. I want the green check mark on top because whether it's been selected or deselected, I still want that check mark to be displayed. Now, For reasons I'll get into in a minute, I basically want to have this term deselected in a group because I'm going to perform an action against all of those objects in a group. Unfortunately, I can't create a group with one object in it. So I'm going to cheat here slightly, and this is one of the little tips in here. I'm going to put another object on here. It doesn't really matter what. I'm going to select that object and my term deselected, and I'm going to create a group for those. So I'm going to group those objects, and I'm going to call this group deselected group. Okay? And now I'm going to delete this object that I don't actually want, this ellipse in here. I'm going to delete that. And now, as if by magic, I have my group with one item in it, which is what I want. And again, I'll come back to why that's important in a minute. Now, I'm going to want to have explanations on here as well. You know, when they click on the term, they've got to have the explanation of what the term is. So I'm going to create an object for that. And to speed things along, I'm just going to paste in one I created earlier. So this is my explanation. It's currently hidden. I don't want it to be displayed to start with, only when they click on the term. And this literally just says term 1 explanation. And again, I've named this explanation for term 1. Okay, so now I have my button for term 1 and I have my explanation for term 1. So now I need to create all of the actions that are going to tie all of these things together. So let's look at how to do that. So this is down under actions for the various objects. So first thing, I've got the deselected one on the top. Okay, so when the user clicks on the deselected term, I want them to hide that so it looks like the term is selected. Okay, because it's going to hide the deselected, which is on top, which will show the term selected underneath it or below it. Okay, and because the user can click on one term, then click on another term, click on the third term in whatever order they like, what I really want to do is I want to make sure that the deselected object is displayed for all terms, just in case there was another one that had been previously hidden. And then I want to hide the deselected item for the specific term they clicked on. So the actions I'm going to need in here on click, first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that all of the objects in my deselected group are shown. And this is where groups are kind of interesting because you can perform an action against the group as a whole, whether I show or hide the entire group, or individual objects within it. So here I'm going to say all of the objects in it, I want to show them. Okay, that's the first thing I want to do here, is I want to show whenever they click on any deselected object, I want to show all of the deselected objects in case there was one that wasn't shown on the previous button that they clicked on. Once I've done that, I then want to go to term deselected for term 1, and I want to hide that, which is again going to reveal the term selected underneath it. Now, this is another interesting thing about actions here. They will absolutely be carried out in quick succession in the order shown here. So what this is going to do is it's going to say show all of the objects in this deselected group and then hide the specific one for term 1. So it will always finish doing the first one before it goes to the second one. Now it happens in a microsecond, so to the user when they're playing this back, they don't see that that's what's happening, but it does allow us to put multiple actions in a row and have them carried out one at a time. So first thing it's going to do is it's going to show all of the deselected buttons. Then it's going to hide the deselected button for term 1, which is the one we're looking at the moment, revealing the term selected button. And then I also want to go and show term seen 1 here. The last thing I want to do is I want to display the relevant explanation in here. Now I'm going to get back to that in a second because I want to show you something else in this. So this is my term 1, and I basically need 8 of these for term 1 through term 8. Now I've called this deliberately explanation for term 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this 8 times. Or actually duplicate it 7 times, so I've got 8 copies. And I'm going to do that just clicking on this duplicate button. So I'll click it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that has created another 7 objects for me. And you see these are now named explanation for term 1, which is my original. And now I've got explanation for term 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So it renumbers them all as I want them to be renumbered, which is very handy. That's why I like to put the number on the end. Of course, the text within it still says term 1. And here I need to change this to actually say term 2 and go all the way through those, which I'll do in a second. But the other thing is the alignment's obviously out on all of these, because each time it creates a copy, it moves it down and to the right a bit. But the original is always this one in the top left. This is my term 1. So what I can do is I can just drag the cursor down here to select all of those objects. It's going to select all 8 of those for me. And then I can just go up to here and say left align, top align, and now they're all perfectly aligned for me. So that's a nice tip there as well, to get everything aligned exactly where they want to be. So let me go and change the text for the rest of those. Now all of these are hidden because I don't want any of them to be displayed, but I also only want one of them to be displayed at a time. And this is where one of my favorite features of SAP Enable now comes in, and that is the object visibility control. What this control does is it says out of up to 10 objects, which one do I want to be displayed when something happens. So I'm going to call this my explanations object visibility control. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in there all my 8 explanation boxes, because what happens is when I trigger this and say display object 1, it's going to make sure it hides objects 2 to 8. So it's always only ever going to make sure that one of those is displayed. So in here, I'm just going to quickly run through these, and object 1 is going to be explanation for term 1, all the way to term 8. Now I'm going to do one more thing in here. I'm going to activate object 9, but I'm not going to specify anything in here. I have 8 terms, because when I trigger this, it will basically say, oh, I'm going to display nothing, but it's going to hide all of the other ones. And sometimes that's exactly what I want to do. So now, going back to my buttons here for my terms, if they click on term deselected 1, what I want it to do is I want it to, as we just put in there, I want it to show all of the deselected buttons, hide the deselected 1 button, show or animate in this term scene 1, which is my little check mark. Actually, I'll make that a show as well, just so it comes in at the same time. And the other thing I want to do here is I want to go to my explanations object visibility control, and I want to activate the first thing in there. Activate 01 basically means show this object, which here is my explanation for term 1. Okay, that's what I've got in there. So that's exactly what this says now. If I go to my deselected one, you can see that's what I've got in here. Now, the reason why I build all of this out first for one object is there's a very, very nice feature of SAP Enable now when it comes to duplicating multiple objects. So I am going to want to duplicate multiple objects here. I really want to duplicate all of these things. But I need to be careful here, because when I select all of those, it's selecting this group. And I don't want to duplicate this group. I just want to duplicate the object in it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take those 3 key objects, term selected 1, term deselected 1, term scene 1. Okay, I'm going to select all 3 of those things, and then I'm going to go up to here and click duplicate. Okay, and when I click duplicate, it duplicates those 3 objects for me, and it's now given me a term selected 2, term scene 2, and term deselected 2. Again, the text in them, it doesn't change those. So what I would need to do here is I would basically need to go into term selected here, and I need to say, oh, okay, this is actually term 2, exactly as I did with the explanation boxes. And this one here, again, we're looking at term 2. Okay, so I have to change that, but it's named them correctly. But the key interesting thing with all of this is it also remembers or replicates any relationship between that group of objects that you selected. So if I go down here now with term deselected 2 selected and go to the actions, it's copied the actions as well, and it's replaced them where it needs to. Whereas the term deselected 1, when I had that, it says if you click on term deselected 1, I want you to hide term deselected 1 and show term scene 1. Now it's smart enough to know that, hey, this is a duplicated object and it refers to other objects that I also duplicated, so it's automatically changed these for me. It knows when I click on term deselected 2, oh, okay, term deselected 2 is the one that we need to hide here, and term scene 2 is the one we need to show here. So it builds all of that for me. Now, the one thing it doesn't do is it doesn't change my object visibility control here, because I'm not duplicating anything in that group, so it doesn't know. So here I need to come and change this to activate 2. But this now works. I've now got that exactly the way I want, and it's going to do exactly what I need it to do. Oh, one thing I forgot to do with all of this. If they click on a term that's already selected, what I want it to do is basically deselect it again and hide the explanations. So I missed that out, and I should have done that before I duplicated this, but let me show you what we do here. So term selected, when they click on term selected, basically what I want it to do is I want it to hide all of these explanations. So or whichever explanation is displayed. So in this case, term selected 1, I know that I've got explanation 1 displayed in here. And I could just go and hide that particular one, but I'm going to make use of the object visibility control again. And what I'm going to do in here is say, if they do click on a selected term to basically flip it back to deselected, I want to hide all of the explanations. And the easiest way of doing that here is in my object visibility control at explanations, I'm going to activate 09. Now 9 is the one that I did not put anything in. So that's basically going to say, okay, when you click on term selected 1, I want you to display nothing and hide all of the other ones. I could have done that as a group as well, but I wanted to show this particular functionality in here. And the last thing I want to do here is I know that I've currently got term deselected 1 displayed, and that's the one I now want to hide because I've clicked on term selected 1. So I should have done that and then duplicated it. And again, it will remember those things for me. So far so good, and that will work. And now I basically just take that again and duplicate that all the way through until I've got 8 of these buttons. But to save you walking through that painful process, here's one I created earlier. And this is exactly what we just did. Okay, I've not done anything clever in the meantime. I'll walk you through exactly what we've got. So what I've got here is I've got term deselected 1 through 8 in a group, and when they click on one of those, it basically shows the relevant explanation from my object visibility control. I'm going to say that yes, they've seen that term, and again, as before, deselected group, show all of the objects, and then that particular term deselected I'm going to hide, and that's the same for all of those. And then for the term selected, I've got exactly the same thing. I'm doing activate 09, and term deselected 1 I'm going to show, so it's going to put the deselected 1 over the top again. Okay, and that's that. And that will now work. If I go, there's nothing else clever in here, exactly as we looked at. I've got my explanations, object visibility control, 1 through 8, and then 9 is blank. I've got my explanations in here, and that's it. Oh, and then my term scene 1s. And if I go and preview that, this will now work. So term 1, I click on that, it shows it highlighted with the checkbox on there, and I've got my term 1 explanation here. And if I click to deselect that, it goes back to deselected and it hides that because it's doing object visibility 09, which is the blank one. And I can click on these in any order. I'll click on term 6 and it shows me that. And now with that one still selected, I can go and click on term 3, and that will deselect term 6 because again I'm showing all of the deselected options and then hiding deselected for term 3, and it shows me the term 3 explanation on here. And I can do all of those quite happily in any order. Always shows me which ones I've looked at, always shows the relevant explanation here. And that's it. So that 100% works for me, nice and easy. Now the last thing that they wanted, if I go back to here, is If the user clicks anywhere else on the page that's not an actual term, I want all definitions to be hidden again. So how do we do that? That's a nice easy one. I just create an active area that is basically the entire size of the page, or of the content area of that. I've called it clear everything. And what that does is that basically activates zone 9 on the explanations again, which is blank. And the deselected group, it shows all of those objects. So it basically goes back to selecting nothing. Now, the only tricky part of that is I need to be careful where I position it in my objects list, which is always objects on the top, which is my check marks, because I always want them to be on top of everything, all the way down. So I need to make sure that my clear everything active area is behind all of my selected and deselected buttons. Okay, it's got to be behind those so that you can still click on the buttons. So if I preview that again now, I can click on buttons and it's going to show me that. But if I click anywhere else, like right on the edge here, or anywhere else on the page, or over here, it's going to pick up that active area, which is going to deselect everything and hide the text here. So that was the last little thing I needed to do there. And again, very easy. Just have an active area that covers everything. Just position it correctly in the layering. All right, and that was it. So I hope you found that useful. A couple of useful things in there is how to create a group with only one object in it, because I wanted to create that group when I only had one term button, so that when that was the other thing I forgot to explain actually. This deselected group, I need to make sure that that has all of my deselected objects in it. My term deselected 1 was in it when I created that group. If I go back to the one that was in progress, here I've got my group deselected group with term deselected 1 in it. And I need to add all of my other term deselected 2 through 8 in it. So for example, this one here, term deselected 2 needs to be in that group. Now Enable now doesn't let you just drag and drop objects onto a group, which would be nice, or even put them in there. So what I need to do is select the group, control click on the object, then right click and add object to group. And I would obviously do that at the end when I've got all of my terms in there. And now this entire group I can move down to whatever order I need it to be. Deselected does need to be on top of selected, that's okay, but it needs to be behind the check marks. So I would need to move that to here. This check mark here would need to be up here as well. Okay, so that was the only thing I forgot to mention, is the order is putting those in a group and making sure that that was in the correct order. So I hope you found that useful. I hope the original poster finds that useful. They did contact me to say that they'd figured out how to do it in the meantime. I don't know if they use the same techniques here, but I did want to show you those techniques. So object visibility control, having basically toggle buttons by using effectively 2 versions of the same button and toggling between them, and then using groups and manipulating the group as a whole or objects within a group. Thanks for watching. Anyone else have any interesting scenarios that they want to build out and they're not sure how to do it? Let me know and I will do my best. Thank you.